Alright, so I'm excited to have a session on blogging. I'm a fan of blogging, as you might know. I've written a blog post or two, seen the power of blogging. Or as I like to say, it's amazing that a nobody in Las Vegas could have any influence over an industry. That's the power of blogging, right? So we have two wonderful people from Agency 1022, Beth Friedman, who is the owner, the founder. That's fair, right?
Yeah, that's fair.
And her partner in crime. It's kind of like Batman and Robin, huh? Erin Wabol. Some interesting things about them is Beth Friedman is a former coder. So she crossed the chasm, came to the other side, and so she has a lot of insight into the healthcare industry as well, you know, from both perspectives, which I think is really interesting and unique. And Erin Wabol is best known now, I think, for being pregnant. So let's give her congratulations to her on her first child. So I'm looking forward to, I'll be in the back hearing their insights to hear about blogging and healthcare. So here's Beth.
Sounds good. Thanks, John. Thank you, John. Thanks so much. So yeah, John asked us to talk about blogging today. And when I was thinking about blogging, I was a couple weeks ago in Atlanta as we had a kind of a long, cold winter for us wimpy Atlantans. And I was making bean soup. And you may wonder what blogs have to do with bean soup. Well, I wasn't making just any bean soup. I was making this one. This is Tony's 10 Bean Soup Mix. It's done by the Women's Bean Project out of Denver, Colorado. It's a not-for-profit for women, homeless women, trying to help them get careers started. So it's a great bean soup. It has not one, not two, not three, but 10 beans in it. And it reminded me of blogs, in that blogs are not, of course, the only thing. Blogs are just one piece of your marketing mix, right? They're an important piece. We're going to talk about them today, but they are just one piece. And the other thing that reminded me about beans and blogging is this soup took me not 1 hour, not 2 hours, but 2 days to make and to be really, really delicious, which it is. So your blogs, I've heard an industry statistic that says it takes a good 1 year to get a following, then perhaps even another year to raise awareness and to become a thought leader. So give your blogs time. I guess that's the other thing that we're going to talk about today too. Quick question around the room, I guess, is how many actually write your own blogs under your own name? Okay. How many write them for clients? Both? Okay, cool. All right, awesome. So we've got some good bloggers in here. What we're going to do today is we're going to provide some tips, some do's, some don'ts from our experience, what works, what doesn't work with our clients, as well as what we've learned over the years. We're also going to give you a little bit of background on the current situation with blogs. We did get the chance to do a little B2B in healthcare survey about blogs, and so we'll be looking at the results from those. And then, as John mentioned, you know, he does a blog or two, so he's included at the end of our presentation his 5 B's for blogging. So we'll be actually sharing John's perspectives as well. Okay, a little disclaimer. We actually don't have a blog, so if you're out there looking for ours, it's actually not out there. And this is probably the first lesson learned, is that really blogs aren't for everyone. You know, there's no mandate that says you have to have one, right? So it's just part of the marketing mix. It's just one piece of it. And it doesn't always make sense for everybody. So the first lesson learned is to make sure that you know what your goals are with your blog, and then sort of assess it. You know, assess it after a year, assess it after a year and a half. See what kind of following you're getting, see what kind of traction you're getting. You know, does it make sense for you to have the blog on your own site, or maybe just become a guest blogger on other more popular blogs? So we're going to talk about sort of making those decisions as well today. It's funny, the last session was so awesome, right? Wasn't it so really good? So we actually had a blog a few years ago and found that nobody was really looking at our tips for press relations, or our, you know, how to write a good press release, or things to do at your trade show, or how to really boost your return on investment at HITMC. So we decided to make some little video snippets, but now I so have to hire you to come do them for us. Because I want to definitely bring some humor into it. But we found for our audience, which is folks like you, marketing and PR professionals at healthcare IT companies, you know, perhaps the video or perhaps the YouTube stuff is a better way to reach that audience. So part of what we're talking about is reaching your audience too. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the background. So I mentioned before, blogs are just one part of your mix. This is a statistic from Tech Target Media. B2B buyers, which is what we're dealing with in healthcare, need at least 4 pieces of content before they make their shortlist. So, and blogs is part of that. One of the things we do a lot, and one of my favorite things to do, is whenever I go to a healthcare conference, whatever it may be, whether it's next week's AAPC Coder Conference in Nashville or HIMSS, or HFMA ANIs, I love to sit with the hospital people. Most of our clients sell to hospitals. That's really the space that we're in. So I love to sit with the hospital people over coffee when they're at their breaks, grab a lunch table with them, and ask them what they read, what they look at. And so, white papers, videos, blogs, this is a B2B industry survey, but my survey with those healthcare folks is the #1 way they find products is peer-to-peer. And whether I'm talking to a CFO or a CIO or an HM director, that's what they tell me. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up the phone and call my peer down the street. So that's really important in our industry, which makes customer satisfaction hugely important in everything that our customers do. The other thing that they're keen to is speaking sessions at industry conferences. So a lot of what we do is try and promote our clients to be speakers at industry conferences because that establishes great thought leadership. And the third thing I've learned in talking to hospital buyers is that when they need a how-to, when they want to go somewhere for best practices, they're going to go to the associations. So they're going to go to HIMSS, they're going to go to HFMA, they're going to go to AHIMA and GMA, they're going to go to their related association. And those associations have communities, they have blogs. So I highly encourage all my clients to guest blog with those associations, because it's really good placement, and it's where people go. It's where the hospital buyer is going to go. So the associations are really important. And I guess the bottom line with this slide is just it's that combination, right? And we all know this. It's a combination of things. It's not just one thing. It's not just one bean in my soup. It's a combination of everything. I have a client that shared a story with me a few years ago. They were at a conference. They had 3 or 4 speaking sessions at the national conference. A woman who was an executive at one of the hospitals in the region actually attended the conference, saw them as a speaker. A few months later, read an article in the association publication authored by this same company. A few weeks later, saw their ad in the magazine. A few weeks later, a friend forwarded their e-newsletter to her and said, by the way, you should check that out. Well, by that 4th hit, she was like, okay, sold. I pick up the phone, I call. So really never, I don't believe it ever is in the healthcare sector one thing. It's always that combination. Has anybody in the audience attended pragmatic marketing? Very good, all right, one. I highly encourage it. You as well, right? Big supporter. We're pragmatic certified. So pragmatic marketing is in Boston, and they go around the country doing workshops. Excellent, excellent for anybody that's got a technology product in healthcare. So you want to go, product marketing and product management probably go together and attend these conferences. They're excellent. So Rick, do you know what NIHITO means? Remember that from
It's been 3 years.
It's been 3 years, okay. So NIHITO is something that we really believe in at Agency 1022. Nothing important happens in the office. So the secret sauce to this stuff is knowing your audience, knowing their pain points, knowing what's going on with them. It's easy for, I think, technology vendors to sit in the office and come up with campaigns, and maybe we hit the mark, maybe we don't. But I think the most important part before we even start on them is to know what's going on in the buyer's world. So that's what NIHITO means. And so we have to sort of abide by our own stuff. So we did a survey before the conference today. And we decided to ask folks what they thought about blogs, and specifically blogs in healthcare. So here's the survey results. I want to share them with you. So the folks that we interviewed, we talked to consultants, to vendors, hospital folks. We really reached out to our social network, to our peer-to-peer network, as well as to our clients' clients. So we were able to get a little sampling here of what folks feel about healthcare blogs. I think that the important takeaway for us today is twofold. Why they read, I think, is one of them. So the main reason why they're reading blogs, to keep on top of industry news. I think it's important for us to realize and to understand our blogs have to be relevant and timely, and tie into some industry news. That's why they're reading. And secondly is to learn those best practices. which is again, ties me back to the association affiliations, right? They're looking at blogs for best practices or how-tos. Becker's editors have told me, and you guys know that they're really famous for this, right? They always use the 10 this or the 7 this or the 5 this. But they tell me straight out, they say those articles that have the number in the title get downloaded 3 to 4 times more than anything else. So it really does work for these hospital readers. They really want the how-tos, and they love the 7 best ways and the 8 ways this and the 10 ways not to do this. Important to note also, on the bottom left, is hours per week reading blogs. So the highest is 1 to 2. So our readers don't have much time, so we do have to keep it short. I've been asked from a lot of clients, what's the ideal length of a blog? You know, if you go out and Google it and research it, some folks say 100 and some say, hey, go for 1,000. You know, I say it really just depends on the topic. I think you should, whatever topic you're writing about in a blog, you should cover it well. And I'm going to give you some tips on how to do that in a short amount of words in a few minutes. And then I think this other one is really important too, favorite social network. I think probably a lot of us in the room, our favorite social network is probably Twitter, I would say. Maybe raise hands. I mean, I recognize you all, right? So we're all out there. But important to note, I think, for general hospital folks are much more tuned into LinkedIn. I was really keen to look at the CDW results, and how many shared on Twitter? Very, very few. How many shared via email and LinkedIn and other social networks was much higher. So I think we have to remember to use LinkedIn. Also, there was a speaker yesterday that talked about the value of LinkedIn groups and advertising. And so I think LinkedIn is a great way that we can promote our blogs, get engaged with our audience, especially with the groups, the LinkedIn groups. So, you know, just don't overlook LinkedIn. I guess is my bottom line on LinkedIn. So the question of the day, CDW has their top 50 HIT blogs, and some of these, actually all of these appear on there. But I understand there was a session yesterday with some back and forth on his talk. His talk is the #1 read, without a doubt, hands down. And, you know, maybe it ties back into the news, right? We all want to know the news that's going on. When I meet with CEOs at the really high level at hospitals and IDNs, provider sites, networks, they're so interesting because I'll ask them, that's one of the questions I always ask, what do you read? What do you follow? What newsletter do you get? And time and again, they all tell me they love to look at modern healthcare. They don't necessarily like it, but they like to see who got fired and who's getting sued. And, you know, it says the same thing for them, right? They like to see the news. And I kind of see his talk in sort of that same vein in our industry as well. So it's a news place, but it is the most read one. So that was an interesting result. I thought you guys would be interested in that. These others all kind of came in 1 or 2 votes each. They all sort of fell around the same, but his talk was a yardstick ahead. One of the things I have found out too in talking to hospital buyers at HIMSS and the various conferences and the folks I meet out in the real world is that they will pick 2 to 4 bloggers to follow and just follow those, and they won't really get involved with very many more. So obviously the goal at the end of the day is to get on the short list. And one of the things too that I thought was interesting with this list is there's no vendors on here. So, you know, I would love to say, you know, we write, I think, blogs for 3 or 4 of our clients, right? They have their own blogs on their websites, and I would like to say that's the way to go, but you know what? I'm not sure, right? I think that I encourage my clients to have their own, but I also encourage them highly to guest blog. You know, all these publications are always looking for content. They're always willing to take a guest blog on a relevant topic. And so I think that that's certainly, the combination is the way to go. It's not one or the other. Okay, so with that as a background, let's get into some of the tips. First one, define your audience. Know who you're talking to, deliver only relevant content to them. I mentioned that I try and sit with folks a lot that are our ultimate buyers, our end buyers, and I ask them these 4 questions. These are my 4 questions I always ask when I get a chance to have a cup of coffee or cocktail or lunch. What are the 3 key things going on in your department right now? What are your pain points? What's going on in the real world out there? Because we need to keep really close tabs on that. What are your top sources of information? What do you read? You know, we try and take polls and surveys, but I want to know from us, even down to like each different buyer persona, what is it that they're reading? That should be part of your buyer personas. What's your favorite format? Do they like articles? Do they like blogs? Do they like YouTubes? Do they like webinars? Do they like podcasts? What are some of their favorite formats? It's really important to know that. And then what's their process for finding a new product or service? And as I mentioned, one of the first things I always hear out of their mouths is peer-to-peer. I pick up the phone and I call, the CFO down the street and ask. So that's what we hear, and those are the questions I encourage my clients as well to ask their audience. These are great questions. If you ever get the chance to attend one of your customers' user group meetings, I highly encourage it if you're an agency, because you can get such an amazing audience to sit with and get to the answers to these questions, which helps fine-tune your strategy with them. There's a woman named Rachel Parker. She's CEO of Resonance Content Marketing, and she's just got a really good quote. It's not about you, it's about the people you're trying to reach. So we all have to continue to remember that. Lesson number 2, share knowledge on your blog. Each and every blog should have something meaningful. I had the chance at HIMSS, this past HIMSS, to sit with a couple CIOs, and it was interesting because I sat with them separately, but they all told me the same thing about articles, online articles and blogs, and things they read online. They said, we love to read sort of more of a summary, but I want to have the links to the survey. I want to have the links to the new regulation. I want to have the link back to the core source. So it's important that we're credible, that we're sharing really good knowledge sources in our blogs, and we're including those links back, because people really like to be able to read and then click to read more or to dive deeper. So that's something I encourage you all to include in your blog. Stats, figures, survey results, and always give credit to your source. And this kind of goes with the one I just covered, be authoritative, right? So position your blog as sort of the go-to place for information in your industry and for your niche, information on your niche. And I'm going to cover 3 things in this slide. I'm going to talk about depth, I'll talk about variety, and I'll talk about relevancy. So with depth, we want to make sure you cover your topic well. We talked about the word count before. I think the most important thing is just to make sure you cover your topic well, and use bullet points if you need to. Use more of those links back to resources if you need to get to something deeper. But make sure you're covering it well. Variety, by that I mean mix up sort of your headlines, mix up your flavor, mix up the way that you approach a topic or your reader. Mix up your statistics and your service, so your source links, where you're getting your sources from. So sort of mix it up a bit so that it's not the same content over and over. Last but not least, relevancy. Newsworthy and timely, right? So does everybody remember from the survey the number 1 reason people read blogs is for the news, right? So we want to make sure that we're really timely with this. The biggest thing that happened in our client base was March 31st, right? When the Senate decided to delay ICD-10. We have a lot of clients that are coding clients, and they're in that space. And so that was, really important. So we're all working with them diligently to come up with their message and come up with their information. And it's timely right now. It's all over, everything. All the social media networks and all the publications are already writing about it. So now's the time to ride that wave. One of the ways one of my clients does this piece really well, I have a client that has a woman that just joined them from SSM Healthcare in St. Louis. She was a vice president of revenue cycle, and she is charged now at this company with helping with them with their strategy for their technology that has to do with all the recovery audits, all the audit technology. And she is fabulous. She is well tuned into her association, and she keeps on top of every blip in the radar screen when it comes to that stuff. She shoots me an email, hey Beth, I gotta write about this in my blog tomorrow. Within 24 hours, we've got something written. Sometimes she just sends me a summary via email. I write up a blog, she approves it, we post it. She's done such a great job. I use the blogs a lot in my PR outreach, right, with my media connections and meeting with the press. And that's how I elevate my client subject matter experts as thought leaders. She's done such a good job. At HIMSS, we were able to meet with 3 different media outlets. All 3 of them want her now to do quarterly articles. Every quarter they want an article from her, to the point where we had to turn one down because it was just too much, she couldn't do it. So, I think it's really important to be timely. And to have somebody like that is so in tune with the industry, that knows what news is relative and what's important to share. So be authoritative with depth, variety, and relevancy. This is probably I have two of my favorite tips, and this is one of them. Use catchy headlines. You know, it's so funny when I and it ties in, I guess, to the last session, when I kind of feel like I'm going out a little bit on a limb with my headline or my first lead-in sentence or two, or my analogy or my metaphor, and I think it's a little bit out there, and I think it's a little bit silly. Those are usually the best ones. It's kind of funny how that works. But use catchy headlines. Matter of fact, the Delta Sky magazine, do anybody else fly Delta here? Yeah, did you see Cher's quote? Cher had a great quote, and this ties into the session. You may use this down the road. So Cher says, until you're ready to look foolish, you'll never have the possibility of being great. That might be one for you guys, right? So this is use catchy headlines. These are some funny ones, but I came up with some funny ones for ICD-10 delay, right? So in the legislation, I heard that it's 7 lines. Here, I gotta look at my notes, hang on, because now I can't remember them in my head. 7 lines, 7 lessons learned, right? 7 lines of law. Here's what the 7 lessons we've learned so far in preparing for ICD-10, that now we can apply for the next year. How about the SGR Band-Aid causes hospitals hemorrhage? How about March 2014, madness in hoops and hospitals? It's just use catchy headlines, and it's kind of fun, and it really just adds a lot of, adds some humor, and it's something that can be kind of dry sometimes. Human interest stories are great, so let me tell you this story, which was fun. Actually I'm going to share that one on the next slide. I'm going to share a human interest story that really got a lot of traction, was really fun. I think this is my last tip, expand your reach. So we talked a little bit about how on that list of the top blogs, none of them were company blogs. I think it's really, really important going forward that we promote our company blogs, but also participate in other blogs. Be a guest blogger, submit content to other blogs. Find out what blogs your clients are reading, or your clients if you're an IT firm, and offer up guest bloggers, whether it's your subject matter experts or your executives. Erin's going to talk a little bit about the team, and cast a wide net. So this is the story I'll share with you. So we did this a couple weeks ago, where I wrote a catchy headline about 4-leaf clovers, and how this was before the Senate decision, how finding coders was going to be difficult this year. And it was going to be like finding 4-leaf clovers. And which my grandmother, who's 98, has a knack for doing that, and I've inherited it. So I had just found one actually in the park, like that day, and so I wrote about how finding coders was going to be like finding 4-leaf clovers. So we wrote this blog, we submitted it to ICD-10 Monitor, which is sort of a blog site about ICD-10, and they posted it. Well, what's interesting is a bunch of coders replied. We had a bunch of coders respond to us. And one of them in particular is Beverly. So here's Beverly. Beverly replies to the blog, right? So the owner of the blog site calls me, emails me back, says, wow, this woman replied. She sends this picture. She wants a job. And so we actually posted then a subsequent blog about, Beverly and her story. And she's 52, and she's a trained cosmetologist, and she's been working in a physician's office, and now she wants to get a job as a hospital coder. And so it's kind of fun, because now she's actually, for the client that I wrote the blog for, she's testing with them, and they're probably going to hire her. So we can actually take this all back around now to be a really fun human interest story. So there's Beverly. So sometimes, extend your reach with your blog, I guess is the bottom line for that one. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Erin.
So we all know that hitting publish on our blogs is just kind of the first step, right? Our main goal is to establish connections and to create relationships with our readers. And I think if we think of it in the form of a community, we've got the leaders, we've got the question askers, we have the question answers. It can really create for an effective blog series. And when we talk about being a leader for blogs, we use it as simple as maybe not turning off comments. I don't know if anybody here has run into that, but we've had some clients in the past who, maybe they have hundreds or thousands of employees nationally or on an international level, and they've been very loath to leave comments open for fear of a disgruntled employee or a client that may have been upset. And it really discourages readers, not only because, they can't contribute to the conversation, but, they can go elsewhere and, contribute somewhere else. So it's just important to kind of lead by example and let your brand personality kind of shine through to create two-way conversation. And another piece is asking questions. It can sometimes be nice to create some kind of controversial post and to ask questions of your readers. I think it was Shahid said a while back at a HITMC media meetup to be provocative, and he was referring to social media, but I think the same can be true for blogs. Shake things up a little bit and then ask questions of your readers to get some conversation going. It doesn't have to be that one way. And then also on the same token, to answer questions. We have a client who, they're a coding company, they do some release of information, but they have their managers and directors who are in the trenches on the hospital level, dealing with issues and problems on a daily basis. And they're answering a lot of questions in the field, and we've been pretty successful at creating kind of a blog series out of the questions that they're answering with their clients. So just another way to kind of put a spin on, as you're creating content. And then also inviting your readers to be the leaders, and that just means that we can't be experts on every single topic that we want to talk about. There's a lot of different things that you may want to cover, and it's always a good thing to, ask your readers to contribute, or maybe they've got some suggestions. And that's just what we mean by kind of forming a community when it comes to blogs. Avoiding link bait. These guys certainly are the exception and not the rule. So when I mention this one, I'm not referring to creating the parodies or making things fun, because that's certainly important and they've been very successful at it. But what we mean here is that if you can't tie it to your company or your technology or your products or services, it probably doesn't belong. So, as adorable as Charlie biting his brother's finger was and still is, unless we could come up with some ICD-10 code for that or something that's relatable, we advise our clients to keep that out of the blog content. There's always viral videos and fun stuff that we share internally that we get a kick out of, but saving it for our personal platforms or personal space, it's just something to keep in mind. My colleague would like to say that Orange is the New Black because she's a huge fan of that show.
You're fans?
I don't watch it. Okay. But in this case, I'm saying storytelling is the new black. We're all marketing professionals. We all understand the value of storytelling. There was a session on it yesterday, and it's such an important piece to keep in mind as you are writing and creating, your topic and your content. And to use clients or use scenarios, use that problem solution type little stories and weave that in, and it can really engage your readers and kind of get them interested right from the beginning. Beth does a good job at that, when she's writing her articles, to create some kind of story. You just mentioned the four-leaf clover, so it's just a way to kind of get somebody interested right off the bat, because chances are they're going to remember a story way more than they'll ever remember your company or product. It's sometimes true. So just another piece to keep in mind. Did I skip one? Beth and I don't claim to be SEO experts, so we're certainly not going to get into detail about it. I know there's a session on that later, but as marketing professionals, we do know that Google is smarter than it was several years ago, and the rules have changed, and they're always changing. But we know that more than ever, people are searching online for products and services, and they're doing tons of research up front before they're ever sending an email or picking up the phone. And when we think of the importance of our blogs and what they mean for a search engine, it's to think of it as, every single blog that we write is a web page, and every single one of those web pages become an opportunity for us to rank well in search rankings when someone's looking for products and services. So just always kind of keeping that top of mind as you're writing your content, including keywords into the titles, those catchy headlines that Beth talked about, those are opportunities to, put your rankings up higher. Numbered lists or bullets are always great because, you're not necessarily sounding like some kind of robot, but you're able to weave some keywords in there that maybe you couldn't in just long dialogue or long text. And then obviously, distributing on through all social media networks, of course, is another way. We're huge fans of recruiting others, tapping into as many sources as possible. It's all about information sharing at the end of the day, blogging is. And just like there's not, one bean in Beth's 10 bean soup, marketing shouldn't be the only department that authors blogs. It's about looking beyond marketing, even, looking beyond sales and, even past the subject matter experts and the other people within your company. It's, what are the interactions that they're having with their clients? What are those conversations that are taking place? And using those, and they can really become excellent blog content because it's, pain points and problems that people are experiencing out in the field, and it's relatable. John Lind does a great job of that, I think. When he's having conversations at a trade show or on the floor, he kind of weaves that into his, his content. And, you were gonna say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, one of the things that we struggle with as an agency, and you all probably do, whether you're an agency or whether you're in a vendor community, is the subject matter experts that are really the ones that you want to get those pearls of wisdom from, right? About to put into your content. They are the busiest folks in your company, by far. And they're tough to pin down, and they're tough to even get a minute from. So, one of the things that we do is, I am constantly, as the agency for some of my clients, keeping my eyes and ears open for interesting articles that come my way, interesting, releases from CMS or, things that happen, just trying to keep my finger on the pulse at all times. Sometimes I'll just send a link to one of my subject matter experts and say, hey, by the way, this would be great for your blog. Can you just give me 3 or 4 sentences about it? So, she or he can just shoot me a quick email back, 3 or 4 sentences. I can then work that into a nice blog. And, so you're probably never going to get somebody to sit down and actually blog, unless it's one of y'all. These subject matter experts just don't have time. And so it's, you have to make it easy for them. To recruit others, you have to make it really easy for them, as easy as possible. But the upside's tremendous, right? Because these are the subject matter experts that the companies want to raise up. They want to be out there. The media want to find them. One of the couple of the press people have told me they're always looking at LinkedIn for hospital sources to call up and interview. And they use LinkedIn to find hospital sources. Why can't they use me to find hospital sources as well, right? So recruiting others is great, but you're going to have to hold their hands.
I'm interested to know, actually, since so many of you are personally doing the blogging, what your approach is and how you kind of tap into people within the company. I don't know if anybody wants to share that. We're about to cap, but yeah.
One of the things that I do is I encourage them to call me on the phone when they're driving somewhere. I can record in my office over a phone line, and it works beautifully because I'm recording. I'm not scribbling down notes. I have to be listening to what they're saying, and they've got to be maybe on a train or in a car going somewhere, and they're happy to talk about their subject or their latest rant.
It's a good idea.
And you're absolutely right. So the woman I mentioned that came from SSM, who I talk to frequently, she always says, yeah, give me a call during this time, I'll be in the car.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So I engage my employees to write actually their own, we blog/article, right? And on our site, and as I find that we have a lot of different personalities in the group, we can engage one of the gentlemen is very humorous, and so he always comes at it from a humorous standpoint. The security guy is a security geek type guy who writes very security geeky. Great traffic, gets a lot of, but that's his spin on it. So I think by engaging different personalities also, you're going to get some great readership because you're going to get people interested in the funny taglines and the funny side, and then you're going to get the people who are, tunnel vision on the
On the how-tos, right?
Yeah.
And that's the point about variety. I'm going to make sure you mix it up. That's awesome. That's excellent.
When I first started, I manage editor sort of the blog, and I get subject matter experts to blog. I interview them and then write the copy. It goes on under their name. But what I struggle with is the title of the blog. In order to come up with a catchy title like you suggested, it doesn't rank in search results. And I want to put keywords up there, even if it's just one or two, because those just really grab readership through search. And yet I struggle with wanting to create a humorous or catchy title that doesn't have any relevancy in it, like Clovers, for example. So I heard what you said, and I thought, well, yeah, I tried that too, but that didn't work. So how do you balance that?
It's a balance, and so I don't use a catchy one every time, right?
Okay.
So, and remember that the one thing that does drive readership is there's, especially for blogs or even mini articles / articles, is there's numbers, right? The 7, and that's a great place to put your keywords in, right? Because you're going to tie that into whatever you're trying to talk about. But I think that the way I use the catchy ones is I don't do it every time. And I kind of mix them up. Because once you get them to the blog site and they think it's relevant, they're probably going to sign up for the blog, right? To receive it. We just want to get them there. We want to get them to it.
Just a couple notes. I would say if you're looking for content, the best place to go are the people who are already touching customers anyway, because you're trying to touch customers through your blog. So all of your sales guys, everybody working in a call center, technical support, etc., are all great fodder because that morning they probably had an anecdote from a customer complaining about something which could turn into a post. The sales guy has just visited with somebody who said, hell no, I'm not buying your product, here's why, and that turns into a blog post. So definitely think about, if you're not sure, executives aren't always the best people. In fact, they're sometimes the worst people to go to, unless they're regularly talking to customers and the output that they give you come from that regular speaking to the customer. So be very, very cognizant about where that content is coming from, because it might be useful to you, but to nobody else. The point that you were making, and I think there might be a slight confusion between a catchy title and a provocative one. And that is that provocative often just go opposite of whatever is being reported, right? Like I remember there were several videos that I did when Meaningful Use first came out, in which on video I'm on video saying, do not go to Meaningful Use, right? So if everyone is talking in one direction, whatever you say opposite is going to get attention. And the good news about opposite is the SEO ranking will be exactly the same because the keywords are all identical. So one very simple way of remaining catchy, and whether you think of it catchy or provocative, it's not that important, that diction, but SEO absolutely matters. So I mean, you can remember though that just from a technical perspective, you could actually have your title be X and your keywords and your meta tags match either opposite or extending it. So Google definitely is smart enough to pick up both. But being provocative just by being opposite of what everyone else is saying is actually a great way to get your titles. In fact, that's how on my blog, about half of the time, all I'm saying is whatever BS everyone else is saying, don't listen to it, right? And that gives us enough attention to at least read the article or click the link or move to the next part.
Like I'm thinking about ICD-10, right? So the title would be, the industry, healthcare should go to ICD-10 11, but then 10 reasons not, right?
There you go, absolutely.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Just 2 comments following what John said. I think what you want to do is you want to be different without being nutty. Sometimes I'm nutty and I'm different, and I think that's very important to be counter-cyclical, counter-whatever, to make your point. Secondly, despite the fact we live in this world, we also live in a greater world, and I think it's always good when you can bring a common experience to bear as something analogous. I wrote a post in his blog that said, when something goes wrong at the wedding, the caterer always gets the blame. And I took the analogy to say to the vendors of EHRs, you're the caterer. And it doesn't matter if the implementation goes bad, it doesn't matter if the training is crappy, it doesn't matter if they made bad choices or they told you to do something wrong, you're going to get the blame. So you have to be doubly alert and sensitive to what's going on in the entire process, just the way the caterer at a wedding does. And I got that from a wedding caterer.
And that's a great example of your point about storytelling, right? His article was actually brilliant because I get all kinds of requests for articles all the time. When I saw his, I was like, I gotta put this one up because it told a story and made the point. And we should tweet about that. I'll send that one out if you guys want, because that has story plus uniqueness, and it's against what everyone else writes.
Absolutely, metaphors, analogies, perfect. And one of the ones that I did that was the best one I wrote was about, I was sitting there at my home office one day watching my dog chase squirrels. So I wrote about dogs chasing squirrels. I mean, you're right. When you can weave those in and then tie them to what you want to talk about in the blog, it's great. It's great. It's entertaining too.
And then the other thing you said about interview or talking to your audience is one of the things that's worked well. But I don't contribute as much as my people do, but I do. And when I write, though, what I generally do is I interview someone from our target audience, and I take whatever topic I'm funneling at the moment, and I interview at least one, ambulatory practice physician on that topic to get their immediate thoughts, their immediate opinions, and then reflect on that. And again, it's a way to bring, because as you said, peer-to-peer, people are going to read that because there's another doctor involved in commenting on that topic.
Absolutely, that goes back to our point of making your readers your leaders, right? It's awesome. Like John does a great job of that since he walked back in. We can say that again. When he's at the industry, he's sitting and interviewing somebody, then he writes about it in his blog. And that would be excellent too. I love your point about the sales guys. We always forget those guys. But they're out there, they're having the real conversations day in and day out, and they matter. And those conversations are fabulous.
Right. No, I love the sales guys. I mean, they're horrible writers, but the ideas that they give are great.
Right.
They
And they're good ones to get in the car too.
Yeah, that's right.
This was the last piece. This certainly is I'm sure, a no-brainer for everyone here in this room, but it's worth mentioning. We've had clients or companies in the past that have spent so much time and resources on creating, really nice blog and great content, and then it just sits like a little island on their website, and they can't figure out, or leadership can't figure out for the life of them why it's not successful. And then, usually the misstep is by not integrating with all of the other marketing activities that are going on. It should not be treated like a silo. So weaving it into email campaigns, tying it into direct mail campaigns, using that URL, obviously pushing out, on social media platforms or creating a strategy around it. All of those different, pieces of the puzzle are just so important, to making a blog successful. There was an article I just read, we can flip to the next one, an article I just read from, there was a social media marketing world conference a couple weeks ago, and one of the top 4 trends that they listed was that blogging will continue to rule. And their reasoning for that is because, we've obviously experienced the rise in social media, but still at the end of the day, we own our blog. And, we can control it and kind of make that, the hub of all of our marketing activities. So we would be doing you guys a disservice if we didn't include some words of wisdom from our sponsor, John Lynn, because he is an expert blogger after all, right? So he left us with 5 B's of blogging, and his first is to be interesting. So according to John, if it sounds like a press release, people won't read it. If it sounds like sales jargon, people won't read it. And if it sounds like something that they've heard before, people won't read it. So something to certainly keep in mind as you're drafting your blogs. And the second B is to be consistent. People oftentimes start off really gung-ho and are writing like crazy, and then everyone's strapped and bandwidth is always an issue and things kind of fall to the wayside. But consistency can be key to not only getting readers, but keeping readers and keeping the momentum up. If you're going to commit to once a week or once a month, keep the momentum going and don't kill your readers' expectations. It's kind of the point that John was trying to make there. And then the third is to be a marketer. And this is just the comment about integrating with your other campaigns. Just because you have a blog URL doesn't make it so. So put on your marketing hat and make sure that you're properly promoting the blog to make it successful. And he does offer a word of warning that don't be a marketer within the content itself, right? That's where we need to have the journalism hat on. And but get creative with how you want to push it out. And then the fourth is to be useful. We all want to provide value to our readers. So keeping in mind to be consistent, of course, is important, but making sure that John says if you can ask and answer the question, am I providing value to my reader? He mentioned this yesterday. If you can do those things, then you're doing a good job. And then fifth, and the one that is certainly important, is to be human. We're in healthcare IT. We get very technical and very granular and very detailed. And at the end of the day, we're humans talking to humans. So I think, John was just trying to say here, it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to, you want to give yourself a voice and a personality and to try to connect on a human level. So those are his 5 Bs. And we're at time, I believe. I'm not sure, I can't see from here. So we'll leave you with just a little takeaway. Just out of curiosity, has anyone used or heard of this concept of brain journalism website? It's relatively new. Beth and I have attended a few webinars and workshops on the topic, and it's kind of, in a sense, a little bit of an evolution from blogs and websites, company websites. We've got a little PDF that we threw up, and then I believe we have printouts as well on the little table out there, but it's a whole session in and of itself. But certainly a lot of hospitals are kind of starting to do it, and we've seen a few case studies where they've been successful at it. So just something that we wanted to leave you guys with, and we won't get into detail about it now. But,
We have a some questions.
A few minutes for questions. I've got some bean soup for good questions.
Yeah, I mean, we have a break, but we ran over on the first one, so we can run over on this one for 5 minutes or so.
So one of the pieces of advice you gave, which was great for most blogs, is to be timely. However, timely often does not mean that the content will be evergreen. So can you talk about what the mix should be and what you recommend there?
Well, think
Or
about...
maybe just explain evergreen, so if I didn't.
What's evergreen?
We'll have a long life, correct? Long shelf life. So I remember and I think back about why people read blogs. I always try and go back to what's the reader looking for? Who's the audience? What do they need and want? They want news, but they're also looking for the how-tos. And so those how-tos in healthcare, as you know, don't change that frequently. Some best practices are still around from a decade ago, right? Now, we have new best practices, and there's always new ones emerging. So I like to mix it up, right? I like to mix up news with best practices and really focus on those two. If I'm not writing about one, I'm kind of writing about the other. Or I might write about the news, and then the next week it might be, well, here's the best practices to handle that news, to deal with that news, that new regulation, that change, whatever it may be.
And you do that on the same blog, or you're doing
The same author's blog, like she will do the next post will be.
And to your point, though, I mean, it is a fine line between keeping that schedule or consistency. We create a strategy, you've got this amazing calendar, you're ready to go with it, but to make sure that the value is there. So we've got a client who, at one point, they were doing 1 blog a week, and it was just too much. We were tapping on their subject matter experts, coming up with good content, but then it became a struggle. Like, we're doing it just for the sake of pushing it out, and then the value gets lost. So we scaled it back from weekly to twice a month. And especially with integrating with all of the other channels, and you can extend the shelf life and make it last a bit longer, by promoting it other ways and not necessarily feeling the need to put up new content every single week.
There are some companies that will host a blog themselves, and other companies that will kind of secretly host a blog for their subject matter and topic. Do you guys have a preference for one over the other? Can you talk about the value of doing one over the other?
When you say secretly host a blog, do you mean like with one of the other, like with John's blog or with something else, or do you mean
microsite?
Oh, microsite. I don't know. I tend to think the healthcare buyer, if they're interested in blogs and they want to read a blog, I tend to think they're not going to the vendor site. I mean, I probably shouldn't say that because we have 3 clients that we support their vendor site blogs. But
We'll cut this out of the video.
Yeah, right. But I tend to think that they're going to find it in other places. So I almost would say guest blogging on another popular site, providing guest content once in a while that will drive them back maybe to look for you on your website. I almost think that's going to be the future trend. Or this brand journalism website, when you see one of these, it looks like, it looks like maybe a healthcare informatics site or a health data. It looks like a publication, but it's by a vendor. McKesson does a good job of it.
Yeah, it's a different way to, push out content or to promote things, and it's actually treated completely separate from the company website itself. So, there's examples of taking boring boilerplate press releases and making it, throwing a journalistic spin on it and making it an interesting story, big visuals, catchy headlines, and very, very little of marketing the company itself. So it's kind of a completely different way to think of it, and especially as marketers, that is scary because we want to track everything, and it's just a whole different way to look at it. But they actually are, in a sense, microsites, these brand journalism websites.
It's a question of bandwidth, right? If you do a microsite, how are you going to keep doing content? Because if it's just a blog on your corporate site, it doesn't have to be updated as much. But if you do a full microsite and you don't update it, or at least you don't have a good strategy for how it's going to feel fresh, then you lose some value, I think, especially with the microsite. Whereas the blog, corporate blog, that's fine. People understand you're busy, So I would say it's more bandwidth. How much content do you want to do? How are you going to keep the microsite fresh? Do you have enough resources to be able to do that?
Yeah, and the nuance around that is if you're a small company, you almost always want to do a microsite because you're unknown. There's nothing that you can do about that because you want to build the microsite to push people over back to your site. So that's SEO, right? If you're a medium-sized company, you now should be doing both. You have a microsite or multiple microsites that are driving to your traffic, and then your blog is supposed to be driving traffic to your microsites. If you're a big company, you just stick with your own blog because you've got enough that you can do. And big companies already know how to do microsites already. The tricky part about microsites is whether or not the microsite, and I was going to ask you guys a question about competition. How much competition or co-opetition in many cases should you talk about in either your own blog or your microsites? Because actually several vendors have done a really good job with their microsites, but primarily because it's not just about their industry only, or their company only, but multiple companies in a co-opetition manner, so they don't mind promoting others, and that's what gives credibility to that microsite.
Yeah, I don't know that any of we've ever included our clients' competitors, but they're partners for sure,
Okay.
right? Business partners. We include a lot in the blogs. And you're right, to make those cross-links between companies.
Sean.
So I'm also interested in, a lot of my blog content, in my opinion, is fodder for good articles. And now there's kind of a line being blurred between articles and blog posts because, again, we're in a 140-character world and 2-second, video clips. But if I were interested in pitching an article, one of the basics is it been published? Is it original content, obviously? And I would like to draw from some of my blog posts to create articles, but I want a different vehicle. I want a public vehicle. So how do you make that transition and that pitch based on having already published some of this information?
So how do you choose between blog posts versus pitching it as an article?
It's all about press relations, right, John? And this is where I'll put on, I guess, my PR hat, right? It's all about having a good relationship with the media outlet that you're trying to reach. And, I think any good content is good content, and you can reformat it in the way that's going to be most appropriate for that outlet, for that publication. So I think it's all about having that relationship to start with that media person, whoever it is you're trying to reach and get published in, and then knowing what they need and what they want and how they need it and want it. And then of course a lot of the ones I write for are peer reviewed, so they also then go through a peer review process.
So if you ever have a choice, always take the article route, and then you write a summary blog post, coverage, etc. about that article. It's never nice to do it the other way around. If you have a choice, you definitely don't blog on your own if someone else will do it for you. That happens to us often, is that as bloggers, people will ask us to write for them. Now, normally we say, hey, if I've already written a post and you want it, go for it. It's not a big deal. But oftentimes they'll want a unique article. And then we have to say to ourselves, well, I've already got a big reach. Why the heck do I need to post somewhere else? Well, even us with a big reach, we go out because a bigger reach is still better than our own. So you do the article for them. but then you blog about the fact that they asked for an article, why did they ask for it, what was the context around it, etc. It gives you 2 stories instead of 1. So I'd say your answer is very, very simple. Always take the article, but blog about it too.
Yeah, for one of our clients, every article that we get published for them, that we write and gets published, we write a mini blog snippet that goes on their company corporate website with a link back to the article.
Yeah.
Correct.
And I would add to that, I mean, that as a blogger, I love when they do that, right? It's kind of like giving back to me, like, thank you for doing it. It's like saying thank you, you know? Like, I appreciate your article enough that I'm going to share it with my user base. And that's really gratifying and appreciate. I mean, I still have articles from 2 years ago that people link to that I'm seeing traffic from, and I get to see that vendor's name again in my stats because, you know, most bloggers are stats whores, right? We look at it and see where they're coming from, right? And so, you know, I get to see that company name again because they link to me. So I think that's good. The challenge to what Shaw had said, though, is when do you decide to wait, right? Because maybe I'm sitting on an article that you pitched me for 3 weeks, a month, you know, maybe you pitched me at HIMSS, right? And now I'm 2 months after, I'm still writing that article. I still have it in my queue, right? But I haven't written it. So when do you say, okay, I give up on that journalist or that blogger and just write it yourself, right? And that is a hard balance, but then it goes back to what she said, like those relationships, you know, you can ping that person again if you know them and say, hey, you know, I know we talked about this. Are you planning to write it or not, you know? So I mean, that's where the relationship really matters, right?
After all, we're humans to humans.
Yeah, I think we're out of time.
Yeah, thanks, you guys.
So I think
so
we have
much.
a short break, probably.